That's what the paper taped to the elevator said the morning I moved in. Not welcome, not emergency contacts, not trash collection schedules. Just 5 rules. Typed, unnumbered, no logo, no building management signature, no explanation. I remember standing in a lobby with 2 boxes in my arms, reading them over and over because they felt like a joke that wasn't funny enough to actually be a joke. Rule 1. If apartment 307 knocks on your door, do not answer. Rule 2. If the elevator arrives already occupied, wait for the next one. Rule 3. Never report sound from the walls after midnight. Rule 4. If you see someone standing in a laundry room after 2 a.m., leave immediately. Rule 5. If management posts a 6th rule, move out immediately. That was it. Just 5 strange instructions taped beside a directory. I laughed. A couple moving furniture nearby laughed too. Nobody seemed concerned, which somehow made it stranger, because if it was a prank, everyone was treating it seriously. I should explain something. I wasn't exactly moving in a luxury housing. The building was old, cheap, the kind of place you rent when your savings account is dying and your options are limited. 6 stories, 52 units, built sometime in the 70s. The carpets smelled permanently damp. The hallways had that yellow lighting that makes every surface look sick. But the rent was affordable. That's all I cared about, at least at first. The manager handed me my keys. Older woman, gray hair, tired eyes. When I pointed at the rules, she immediately looked away. Not annoyed, not amused, uncomfortable, like I had mentioned something personal. Do people actually follow those? I asked. She paused, then nodded. Most do. What? Another pause. Longer this time. Then she handed me my lease paperwork. Conversation over. That should have bothered me more than it did. But moving is exhausting. By evening, I had unpacked enough to function. Apartment 412. 4th floor. End of the hall. 1 bedroom. Tiny kitchen. Old windows. Thin walls. Nothing special. For about a week, everything was normal. Work. Sleep. Microwave dinners. Netflix. The usual. Then I met the tenant from 307. Or at least I thought I did. It happened in the elevator. I was heading downstairs around 7 in the morning. Late for work. Still half asleep. The elevator stopped on the 3rd floor. The doors opened. A man stepped inside. Mid-30s maybe. Brown jacket. Dark hair. Normal-looking guy. He nodded politely. I nodded back. The elevator continued descending. Then he asked something strange. What floor do you live on? I told him. 4th. He smiled. Good. That was all. Just one word. Good. Then he got off in the lobby. I forgot about the encounter almost immediately. Until later that night. I mentioned it to another tenant. A retired teacher named Linda who lived across from me. She dropped her grocery bags. Literally dropped them. Milk hit the floor. Apples rolled everywhere. Who? She asked. The guy from 307. The color drained from her face. You spoke to him? Yeah. When? This morning. Linda stared at me, then slowly shook her head. 307 is empty. I laughed. She didn't. Seriously, she said. No one has lived there in 3 years. I figured she was mistaken. Old buildings are full of rumors. People exaggerate, misremember things. Except later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I went downstairs, found apartment 307, and discovered 2 things. The first was that the apartment definitely looked abandoned. Dust covered the doorframe. Mail overflowed from a rusted slot. The second thing was worse. The nameplate beside the door still contained name. David Mercer. Below, it was a faded eviction notice, dated 3 years earlier. I stood there for a long time, trying to convince myself Linda had been wrong about the timing. Maybe the tenant had recently returned. Maybe management forgot to update records. Maybe. Then I noticed something. The dust. There were no footprints. No signs anyone had entered or exited recently. Nothing. The hallway carpet around the apartment looked untouched, as if the door hadn't opened in months. I left feeling uneasy. The next morning, I found a note under my apartment door. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper. One sentence. You shouldn't have gone looking. No signature, no explanation, nothing. I assumed someone in the building was messing with me. It was the only explanation that made sense. At least then, the first real problem started with the walls. Every apartment building has noises, pipes, neighbors, old construction settling. I knew that, but these sounds were different. They always started after midnight. Always. Never earlier. Never later. And they weren't random. At first it sounded like distant conversations. Muffled voices. Just beyond hearing range. Then came footsteps. Not above me. Inside the walls. Slow footsteps. Moving between apartments. Traveling through spaces that shouldn't have been large enough for a person. The strangest part wasn't the sounds. It was everyone else's reaction. Nobody acknowledged them. Ever. One night, I heard loud banging behind my bedroom wall. Like someone desperately trying to get out. It continued for nearly 15 minutes. The next day I asked my neighbor if she heard it. She immediately interrupted me. Don't what? Talk about it. Then she walked away. The conversation ended. Just like that. As if I'd asked something dangerous. A few nights later, I broke rule 2. Completely by accident. It was around 1 in the morning. I'd gone downstairs to grab food. The elevator arrived. Doors opened. Someone stood inside. A woman. Facing the corner. Motionless. Her back toward me. At first I assumed she was just riding up. Maybe distracted. Maybe drunk. I stepped inside. The doors closed. The woman never moved. Never reacted. Never turned around. Then I noticed something. The floor indicator wasn't changing. The elevator wasn't moving. Yet the doors remained shut. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Still nothing. Then the woman spoke. Very quietly. You're supposed to wait. Every hair on my arm stood up. Because her voice sounded wrong. Not distorted. Not monstrous. Wrong. Like multiple people speaking at exactly the same time. I hit the emergency stop. The doors opened immediately. I practically fell into the hallway. When I turned around, the elevator was empty. Completely empty. No woman. Nobody. The security camera directly above the elevator watched silently. The next day, I requested footage. Management refused. No explanation. Just refused. That was when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The building wasn't normal. People followed the rules too carefully. Too consistently. Nobody discussed them. Nobody questioned them. And nobody ever broke them. Except me. A month after moving in, someone disappeared. Apartment 508. College student. Quiet guy. Always wore headphones. I didn't know him well. One day he existed. The next day, he didn't. At first, that doesn't sound strange. People move. Life happens. Except his apartment remained furnished. Lights on. Food in the refrigerator. Phone charging beside his bed. Everything exactly where he'd left it. It's hard to explain why that bothered me. But imagine vanishing in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. Not packing. Not planning. Just interrupted. Then came the part that truly scared me. Within a week, nobody remembered him. Not management. Not tenants. Not even people who had spoken to him regularly. It was as if his existence had been erased. While I mentioned him, people looked confused. The lease records showed no tenant in 508. The mailbox was empty. Even the nameplate disappeared. I started questioning my own memory, until I found a photograph on my phone. A random picture from a lobby, taken weeks earlier. The student stood clearly in the background. Proof. Real proof. Yet when I showed it to management, they acted like they couldn't see him. One manager literally handed the phone back and asked what I was pointing at. That's when I realized something terrifying. Either they were lying, or reality itself was becoming inconsistent. And I didn't know which possibility was worse. Then Rule 4 happened. The laundry room. 2:17 a.m. I remember the exact time, because I checked my phone twice. The room sat in the basement. Small, windowless, rows of old machines, buzzing fluorescent lights. I walked in carrying a basket of clothes, and immediately saw someone standing near the dryers. A woman. Tall, thin, facing the wall, completely motionless. The first thing I noticed was how still she was. The second was that she wasn't casting a shadow. Every machine cast shadows. Every pipe, every basket. Not her. I remembered Rule 4 instantly. If you see someone standing in the laundry room after 2 a.m., leave immediately. For the first time since moving in, I followed a rule without questioning it. I turned around, walked out, closed the door, then stood in the hallway listening. At first, silence. Then the dryers started running. Every single one, simultaneously, even the broken machines. The sounds continued for almost an hour. The next morning, the laundry room was closed. Maintenance signs covered the entrance. Nobody would explain why. 3 days later, I found another note. This one taped inside my apartment. I know how impossible that sounds. The doors were locked. The windows were locked. Nobody had entered. Yet there it was. A handwritten message. You keep noticing things. I moved out 2 weeks later. Or at least I tried to. That's when I discovered Rule 5. Because one morning, I entered the lobby and found a new paper taped beside the directory. A 6th rule. Freshly printed. Still warm from the copier. Every tenant stood staring at it. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Just watched. The paper read, Rule 6. If you have begun remembering previous tenants, do not leave the building. And underneath it, someone had written my apartment number in red ink. I looked around. Everyone else was staring at me. Not angrily, not threateningly, like they felt sorry for me. That's when I understood something. The rules weren't protecting the building from us. They were protecting us from whatever existed inside the building. And somehow, I had already become part of it. The problem is, I don't remember what happened after that day. Not clearly. There are gaps. Weeks of them. Entire sections of my life missing. I know I eventually left. I know I live somewhere else now. I know I'm sitting in a different apartment writing this. But sometimes I wake up convinced I'm still in 412. Sometimes I hear footsteps moving through my walls after midnight. Sometimes I find notes in my own handwriting that I don't remember writing. And last night, for the first time in over a year, I received a photograph in the mail. No return address. No message. Just a picture of the old apartment building. The lobby. The directory. The rules. All 6 of them. Except there was a 7th rule now. One I had never seen before. One that wasn't there when I left. Rule 7. If a former tenant contacts you, do not answer. At the bottom of the photograph, someone had circled a figure standing in the lobby. A man, watching the camera, wearing my clothes, looking exactly like me. I stared at that photograph for almost an hour. Not because of the rule, not because of the building, because of the timestamp. The picture had been taken 3 days earlier. 3 days. I hadn't been near that building in over a year. At least that's what I believed. I flipped the photograph over. Nothing. No writing. No address. No explanation. Just the image. The longer I looked at it, the worse it became. The figure wasn't simply wearing clothes that looked like mine. It was wearing my exact jacket. The dark blue one with the torn cuff. The cuff had ripped while helping a friend move furniture 6 months earlier. A very specific tear, visible in the photograph. Whoever stood in that lobby either was me or had access to things nobody else should have. I ended up digging through old boxes that night, moving records, emails, lease agreements, anything proving I'd actually moved out. I found the lease termination paperwork. I found utility records. I found a contract for my current apartment. Everything appeared normal. Then I found something I didn't remember creating. A folder, hidden deep inside my laptop, password protected. The folder name was simple. Do not open. Most people would probably stop there. I didn't. The password turned out to be my apartment number from the old building. Inside were dozens of files. Photos, videos, audio recordings, notes, hundreds of them, all created during the last month I lived there. Apparently, I'd been documenting everything. Apparently, I'd known I might forget. The first note chilled me immediately. If you're reading this, memory loss has already started. The second note was worse. You have left the building before. Multiple times. It keeps bringing you back. I remember staring at the screen for several seconds. Certain I'd misunderstood. Then I opened the videos. The first few showed ordinary things. Hallways, the lobby, elevators, tenants. Nothing unusual. Then I reached a recording dated 4 days before I supposedly moved out. The video showed me sitting inside apartment 412, speaking directly into the camera. I looked exhausted, terrified. The version of me on screen took a long breath, then said something I still haven't forgotten. There are more apartments here than the building should hold. At first I thought I was rambling. Then the video continued. The floor plans don't match. I showed pages from maintenance documents, blueprints, Emergency maps. Every version was different. Different apartment counts. Different layouts. Different stairwells. The building changed depending on which records you checked. The city records showed 52 apartments. The fire inspection records showed 63. Maintenance logs referenced 71. None of the numbers matched, and nobody noticed, or maybe nobody remembered noticing. The next video explained why I had become obsessed. Apartment 614, the impossible apartment. According to building records, there was no 6th floor. The building only had 5, yet maintenance requests repeatedly referenced 614. Electrical issues, plumbing complaints, noise violations, years of reports, all filed from an apartment that officially didn't exist. I watched myself explain this with shaking hands. Then I held up a photograph of a hallway labeled floor 6. I nearly dropped my laptop because I had absolutely no memory of taking that picture. No memory of seeing that hallway. Nothing. The next file contained a voice recording. I recognized my own voice immediately. If you're hearing this, don't trust your memories after the 6th rule appears. Static interrupted the audio. Then came another voice. Quiet, almost whispering. Not mine. You came back. The recording ended. I listened 3 more times. The second voice remained. I wish I could tell you I stopped investigating after that. I didn't. Curiosity is dangerous, especially when you think you're investigating something that already happened. A week later, I drove back to the building. I know, stupid, but by then I needed answers. The building looked exactly the same. Same brick exterior, same parking lot, same cracked entrance sign. Nothing appeared different until I stepped inside. The lobby directory had changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Apartment numbers existed that I didn't remember. Names appeared where there should have been blanks. The elevator panel now included a button marked 6. I stood staring at it, because that button had never existed before, at least not that I remembered. An elderly tenant entered the elevator beside me. I pointed at the new button. What floor is 6? He looked confused. What do you mean? The 6th floor. He stared for several seconds. Then his expression shifted. Not confusion, recognition, fear. He immediately exited the elevator, without saying another word. The doors closed. I was alone, and the button was still there. Simple, ordinary, impossible. My finger hovered over it for a long time. Then I pressed it. The elevator started moving. Past 5, then higher. The floor indicator changed. The doors opened. What waited outside wasn't what I expected. No abandoned corridor. No hidden facility. No obvious horror. Just a normal hallway. Carpet. Lighting. Apartment doors. Exactly like every other floor. Except for one detail. There were no sounds. No televisions. No conversations. No footsteps. Nothing. The silence felt artificial. Manufactured. Like sound itself had been removed. I walked slowly down the corridor. Apartment numbers stretched ahead. Every door looked occupied. Every mailbox contained names. Normal names. Normal lives. Yet something felt deeply wrong. Then I noticed the photographs. Each apartment door displayed a resident photo. Small identification cards, similar to employee badges. The residents smiled directly at the camera, and every single face looked familiar. Not because I knew them, because they resembled people who had disappeared. The student from 508, the woman from the laundry room, the man from 307. Others I vaguely remembered, all smiling, all listed as current residents. I reached apartment 614. The door stood slightly open, only an inch, a narrow line of darkness visible inside. Something moved beyond the gap. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to confirm someone was there, waiting. I should have left. Instead, I knocked. 3 soft taps. The movement inside stopped immediately. Then a voice spoke. My voice. Again. You're late. The door slowly opened wider. I stepped back instinctively. The apartment interior looked identical to mine. Same couch, same kitchen table, same framed photographs, same lamp beside the window. Everything matched. It wasn't similar. It was exact, like someone had copied my apartment perfectly. And I saw the person standing inside. Me. Not identical. Not quite. The differences were subtle. Slightly older. More tired. A scar above the eyebrow I don't have. Yet undeniably me. The other version smiled. Not maliciously, almost sympathetically, like someone greeting an old friend. Then he said something that shattered every explanation I'd built. "You left too early last time. I don't remember what happened next." I know that sounds convenient, but it's true. Everything after that moment becomes fragmented, broken, like pages ripped from a book. I remember flashes. A room filled with filing cabinets. Thousands of tenant records. Names crossed out. Photos replaced. Memories rewritten. I remember hearing dozens of voices speaking through apartment walls simultaneously. I remember finding copies of myself in security footage spanning decades. Different clothes. Different years. Same face. Always entering the building. Never leaving. Then I remember waking up in my current apartment. 3 days gone. No explanation. No evidence. Nothing. Except one thing. My kitchen table contained a new folder. The same folder from my laptop. Except this one was physical. Paper. Heavy. Real. Inside was a lease agreement. Freshly signed. Current date. Current year. Apartment 614. Tenant name. My name. My signature. Perfect match. I don't remember signing it. I don't remember returning. I don't remember any of it. But every month since then, something strange has happened. An envelope arrives. No stamp. No return address. Always delivered by hand. Inside is a rent receipt. Apartment 614. Paid in full. Current resident. Account in good standing. The receipts are getting newer. More recent. Last month's receipt contained something extra. A maintenance request. One sentence. Resident reports hearing someone living in apartment 412. Management has assured resident that apartment 412 remains vacant. And at the bottom of the page, beneath all the printed text, someone had handwritten a final note. A note in my own handwriting. A note I have no memory of writing. It said, "If you're reading this version, don't come back. You're the one that got out." I wish I could say that was the last letter. It wasn't. The next one arrived 12 days later. No envelope again. Just folded paper sitting on my kitchen counter when I got home from work. That detail bothered me more than the message itself. I live alone. The locks hadn't been forced. Nothing was missing. Nothing else had been touched. Yet someone had entered my apartment. Or something had. The paper contained a photocopy of a maintenance report. Date, 3 days in the future. Location, apartment 614. Issue reported. Resident claims another version of himself is attempting contact through unauthorized channels. Management response. Do not acknowledge external communications. Situation remains contained. I read it 6 times, then checked the date again. 3 days in the future. I convinced myself it was a prank. A very elaborate prank. That explanation lasted exactly 48 hours. Because 3 days later another document appeared. The exact same maintenance report. Same date. Except now the date wasn't in the future anymore. It was current. Exactly current. Word for word. Every detail matched, including a coffee stain in the corner. A coffee stain I remembered seeing before. At that point, I started documenting everything again. Photos, scans, audio recordings, cloud backups, physical copies. I wasn't going to trust my memory. Not anymore. The first thing I discovered was that my memories had become unreliable long before I realized it. My phone location history contained dozens of gaps. Entire evenings missing. Hours unaccounted for. Places I supposedly visited but didn't remember. One location appeared repeatedly. The old apartment building. Every few weeks. Usually late at night. According to my phone, I'd been returning there for months. I nearly threw the device across the room. Because I knew that couldn't be right. I would have remembered, wouldn't I? I kept telling myself that. Until I checked security footage from my current apartment complex. The property manager reluctantly let me view recordings. I expected nothing. Instead, I found myself leaving the building at 2:14 a.m. 3 separate times. Different dates, different weeks. Always dressed the same. Always walking toward the parking lot. Then returning hours later. The footage showed me clearly. No question, no ambiguity. Me. The problem was that I had no memory of any of it. Not a second. I stopped sleeping well after that. Every sound woke me up. Every creak in the apartment. Every notification, every passing car. I started keeping lights on overnight. Started placing objects against doors. Simple things. A chair, a glass bottle, anything that would make noise if someone entered. One morning, I woke to find the chair untouched, the bottle untouched, the lock secure. Yet a new document sat on my kitchen table. A photograph. Recent. Very recent. I was sleeping in it, taken from the foot of my bed. Whoever took the picture had been standing less than 6 feet away, watching me sleep. Written across the bottom was a single sentence. You keep checking the wrong apartment. I didn't go to work that day. I sat in my apartment for 12 straight hours. Watching. Waiting. Nothing happened. No intruder. No movement. No explanation. Then, around sunset, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered before thinking. For several seconds, there was only static. Then breathing. Slow breathing. Human breathing. Finally, a voice spoke. My voice. Not similar. Not close. Exactly mine. You found the receipts. I couldn't respond. The voice continued. They weren't supposed to reach you. I finally managed to speak. Who is this? Silence. Then, the same person who asked that question last time. The call disconnected. I stared at the screen. Unknown number. No record. No trace. When I tried calling back, the number didn't exist. Literally didn't exist. The carrier returned an error message. I know how insane that sounds. Trust me, I know. The next month was worse. Because patterns began emerging. The receipts weren't random. Neither were the notes. Each one referenced events before they happened. Small things. Minor details. Future conversations. Future purchases. Future mistakes. At first I thought coincidence explained it. Then the accuracy became impossible. One note warned me not to take Highway 41 on a Thursday morning. No explanation, just a warning. I ignored it. 3 days later, an overturned fuel truck shut the highway down for 12 hours. Another note told me to throw away spoiled milk. The expiration date said it was fine. I ignored that one too. The carton was sour when I opened it. Tiny things, meaningless things, yet always correct. As if whoever lived in apartment 614 knew what happened before it happened. Eventually, I found something hidden inside one of the receipts. A folded piece of notebook paper. Handwritten, long, messy, rushed. The handwriting belonged to me. Not current me, older me. The version from the videos. The one obsessed with the building. The note began, "If this reaches you, containment is failing." The rest became progressively harder to understand. References to loops, copies, residents, missing floors, memory replacement, pages of frantic observations. Most of it sounded like paranoia, until I reached the final paragraph. That's where everything changed. It said, the building isn't creating copies. It's storing versions. Every resident who stays long enough leaves something behind. A memory, a possibility, a life that almost happened. The 6th floor is where those versions accumulate. Apartment 614 belongs to us. Plural. I sat there for nearly an hour, reading those lines repeatedly, because they explained nothing, yet somehow made everything worse. Then I noticed one final sentence written at the bottom. Different ink, different pressure. Added later. The sentence read, "If you're receiving this, it means he's already looking for a replacement. No name, just who exactly he was never explained." But that question answered itself sooner than I expected, because 3 nights later I saw him. Or maybe it. I still don't know. I woke around 3 in the morning. No sound, no nightmare, just awake. The room felt wrong. You know that feeling sometimes? When you sense someone watching. I opened my eyes. The bedroom door stood open, and someone was standing beyond it, motionless, partially hidden by darkness, watching. At first I assumed it was a burglar. Then my eyes adjusted. The figure wore a maintenance uniform, old-fashioned, gray, faded, the kind building staff might have worn decades ago. His face remained obscured, but one detail stood out immediately. The key ring, dozens of keys, hundreds maybe, hanging from his belt. Apartment keys, building keys, storage keys, keys to things people weren't supposed to access. We stared at each other for several seconds, neither moving. Then he slowly raised one hand, not waving, pointing toward my living room. I looked away for less than a second. When I looked back, The hallway was empty. Gone. No footsteps. No door opening. Nothing. I searched the entire apartment. Nobody. Yet something had changed. The stack of receipts was gone. Every single one. Only one paper remained. A lease agreement. Apartment 614. Tenant occupancy, transfer request. At the bottom was a blank signature line. Waiting. I burned that document. Immediately. Watched it turn to ash. Watched every corner blacken. I felt ridiculous doing it. But I wanted something permanent. Something destroyed. Something final. The next morning the lease sat on my kitchen table again. Perfect condition. No burn marks. No damage. As if the fire never happened. That's when I finally understood the thing I'd been avoiding. The building wasn't trying to lure me back. It already believed I belonged there. And maybe part of me did. Because lately the memories have started returning. Not all at once. Fragments. Tiny pieces. I remember hallways that shouldn't exist. Residents who disappeared. Rooms larger on the inside than the building itself. Conversations with versions of myself. Meetings with management that never appeared in records. And most disturbing of all, I remember signing something. Not clearly. Not enough. Just a glimpse. A pen. A desk. A lease. My signature. Voluntary. Not forced. Not tricked. Willing. As if I understood exactly what I was agreeing to. Last week another envelope arrived. Inside was a photograph of apartment 614. The door stood open. The apartment beyond looked empty. Abandoned. Dust everywhere. Furniture covered with sheets. No sign of life. On the back someone had written, "Vacancy available." Then below that, "Current resident successfully relocated." At first I thought that meant me, until I noticed something else. A second photograph had been tucked behind the first. It showed my current apartment building, taken from across the street. Recent. Very recent. One window had been circled. My window. And underneath, in handwriting I recognized immediately, were the words that finally convinced me this isn't over. They weren't written by the maintenance worker. They weren't written by management. They weren't written by whoever kept sending the receipts. They were written by the version of me living in apartment 614. I know because the handwriting matched the notes from the hidden folder perfectly. The message said, "I finally found where they moved us next.